This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, it's Alan Shimel. Thanks for joining us for this segment. My guest this segment is Mickey Bresman, CEO of Semperis. Mickey, welcome to TechStrongTV.
Hi Alan, great to be here.
Thanks. It's nice to have you here. So, Mickey, let's get news out. Actually, before we get to the news, I don't know if we've ever interviewed anyone from Semperis before. So, why don't we start with a little bit about, what's Semperis? What's the company about? You're the CEO. What's your background? Why don't we lay that down first, and then we'll get to the news.
Sure. So, Semperis is all about cyber resilience and threat mitigation, where what's unique in terms of what we're doing is the focus on the identity aspect of it. To a degree, the company approach is the term that we quite often use is the cyber first approach to disaster recovery, which basically means that we are looking at the disastrous side of cybersecurity, but from the view of cyber and not from the view of earthquake as an example. The main focus that we have is around identity and more precise the Active Directory platform, which is the most common identity platform out there by Microsoft that is used by basically any organization in the world. And we provide, I would say, generally three things. We provide the pre-attack scanning for vulnerabilities and then the indicators of exposure that's shown to the customer so he will be able to close those gaps before he's being attacked. Then we also help with during the attack stage by basically showing what changes are being done in the Active Directory environment. What we most known there is for our auto-remediation ability, basically the ability to stop the attack as it's starting to happen. And then the post-attack stage, where if everything has been fully wiped out, the WannaCry, NotPetya, Locker-Goga type of situations, instead of spending days, that's what it takes on average to recover the Active Directory, we provide the ability to do the same thing in a matter of minutes up to hours.
Excellent. And then, Mickey, your background a little bit?
My background, well, I started my technical career in the Navy. That was, about 20 years back. I've been on the consulting side. I've worked for one of the larger banks in Israel for almost a decade. Then started my own professional service company as a CTO. Done consulting in the Microsoft identity and cloud space, I would say. Until we came with the need for something like Semperis, and from there it was all about Semperis.
Absolutely. All right, got that out of the way. Let's talk about the news. You guys have been busy fundraising. Recently announced, yes?
Yeah. So it's been what I would say probably fundraising is never fun. But in this case, I would say that it actually was. And the reason being was that the company actually has been very profitable for the last, I would say, year and a half or so, which basically put us in a position where we are raising funds because we want to, not because we need to. And we have seen a lot of growth. Mostly in the US, that was our main focus, and we serve some of the biggest enterprises in the world today. Many of them are in the US, but also some local government and so on. And we have expanded during 2019. We have expanded to APAC with places like Singapore and to Europe. So having a partner like Insight, that's the fund from which we have raised funds, was definitely a huge, significant milestone for us with all the help that we are getting from them. So besides as you've mentioned, the large funding event, it's also a partner that can definitely help you with best practices for the hyper growth stage, which apparently that's where we are.
Excellent. And just to make it clear, I don't want to say anything that's confidential, but from the public information, this latest round was a $40 million round led by Insight, and it brought your total funding to $54 million. Is that correct?
It is.
Excellent. Good. And along with the funding, two new members of your board. One is an insight person, and one was from another VC, Silver. I forget which one now.
Silvertech, if
Right.
you're probably familiar with Silverstone Properties, one of the biggest real estate. Well, you're from New York region, so you definitely know
Right.
Silverstone Properties.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they have a venture fund called Silvertech Ventures. It's them and additional to other individuals, generally speaking. And Charlie Federman, who is a very well-known figure in the investment and technology space. I mean, he had an amazing career, still has. Joining us as a board member, in addition to Teddy Wardy, that is joining from Insight.
Absolutely. And of course, you know, our audience is no stranger to insight companies. We cover DevOps, cybersecurity, cloud native, digital transformation. And that happens to be where Insight does a significant amount of investing as well. You know, so we just had Thomas Crane, a principal from Insight on, I think, last week. And then I think on today's show that we streamed, Emmett Keefe replayed a presentation he had done for us. So we, you know, and we follow a lot of the Insight. And you're right, they are a great partner, and they have a strong presence, obviously, in Israel, where they bought a large venture-backed fund. But worldwide, they have the presence. No matter, you know, as you mentioned, Singapore is a big area. But beyond the money, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, for me personally, being based in the New York area, as we previously discussed, the company's headquarters in the days where you can actually go to the office is in the World Trade Center. And that's 3 train stops away, again, on the days where it makes sense to take a train.
Right. When we used to do those things.
Yeah, sounds like ages ago.
Right.
But that's 3 stops away from the Insight office in New York.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been to their office, actually. So, you know, you brought up this whole COVID thing. So, first of all, look, with everything going on, it's a good time to raise money. If you don't need it right now, put it away, because who knows, you know, how long this situation goes on and when we return to whatever the new normal is. How, you know, at the same time, what we've seen, along with the COVID pandemic of the virus to people, we've also seen a cyber pandemic of people, you know, taking advantage of the situation and COVID-related cybersecurity threats. I'm wondering if you guys have been seeing that in you know, as you're in your business there. Are you seeing an increased kind of threat level as a result of this?
We should do. I think that, I don't remember who said it first, but no hacker will. I'm not sure that hacker is a good way to put it here, but no cyber criminal will give up a good disaster.
Right.
And we have definitely have been seeing it. Some of the things I even to a degree kind of observe, where we've seen a cyber criminals group basically stating that they will not be going anymore after any healthcare providers, hospitals, and so on. And just 2 days afterwards, one of the hospitals goes down following an attack that came from that group specifically. For us, we have a lot of customers in the healthcare space, hospitals, but also the biggest healthcare provider in the US. And I think one of the things that we have noticed, and I'm personally very happy and proud of, is one of the hospitals here in New York, the bigger one. They basically were in the center of the pandemic. And if you think about their situation about probably 2 months ago, where everything was kind of being in the peak, they still made it a high priority. They acquired our solution just a few weeks before that. And they made it a high priority to make sure that they deploy it even during the pandemic times. So our solution is relatively simple to deploy. It takes a couple of days and you are done. But it was really important for them to have it in place if in case they've been hit by ransomware, so they'll be able to continue and get back to operations basically as soon as possible.
Sure. Let's talk a little bit about ransomware, Mickey. You know, I remember a friend of mine, Jeremiah Grossman, was founder of White Hat Security, pretty well known in security. I remember seeing him give a presentation, it had to be 3 years ago, where ransomware was going to be maybe a $400 million worth of business of ransomware that year. And then for this year, I've seen numbers as high as $20 billion in ransomware. It certainly moved beyond just being a nuisance where you pay some. The question was, do I give them $300, $400, or $1,000 in Bitcoin, or the heck with them, right? It's gone much more upstream, much more expensive, much more of a real threat since then, hasn't it?
So I would say two things on when it comes to ransomware. The first one, general recommendation that I strongly believe in is that you should not pay. You don't know where that money is going. Now, of course, it's very easy to say so when you're not sitting there with your entire business completely shut down. But the general approach that we have, you don't know where the money is going. You don't know, it's definitely not going for anything good. It might be used in buying real weapons that will be used against our soldiers. It might be going to drug trafficking and so on and so forth. So the general assumption is that you should not encourage criminals by paying the ransomware. This is not the right thing to do. With that said, if you recall about a year-ish ago, there was something that was called the Pledge of the Mayors, where basically the different mayors came together and said, we will not be paying ransomware, basically for the same reason that I've just said now. And then at the time, what I said was that this is a great statement, but you need to be able to back it up. You can't just say, I'm not going to pay and that's it. You need to be able to do something about it. Now, it's a bit surprising, but during the next 2 weeks, I was interviewed almost on a daily basis because of what I said. And all I said was what seems to me a very logical step. If you do not want to pay ransomware, make sure that you have a backup and recovery solution in place. Make sure that you know what your disaster recovery plan should look like. Make sure that you have tested it and you actually can trust what you have. Because otherwise, it's just a statement with nothing behind it.
Absolutely. So let's give some advice to people watching. Let's say, look, from a corporate point of view, it's very easy to back up their AWS or their public cloud infrastructure or even on-prem infrastructure. What about, everyone's working from home right now, Mickey, right? And let's say whether we use Microsoft OneDrive or Google Drive or iCloud, right? And you got people who say, well, I'm backing up all my files to OneDrive, for instance. But yet OneDrive keeps a local copy on your machine. If your machine gets ransomware, it'll ransomware, from what I know, and you would know better than me, it'll ransomware your OneDrive in the cloud as well, correct?
So I'll tell you two things. The first one, I would not pretend to be, me personally, an expert in the endpoint protection, definitely not for the consumer side as well, because I've spent my entire career on the enterprise side of things. But the same challenge actually exists with the enterprise as well, but the bit of a twist. Because what enterprises, and we had a customer as an example that we got a call, the customer got encrypted end-to-end, the entire organizations worldwide. And the first challenge that they had was the backup server was encrypted. So how do you solve that situation? So our general recommendation to customers, and this is again, general recommendation can probably be used for people on the personal life as well. Make sure that you have an offline backup. Make sure that it's not only what you have online. Make sure to have a periodical refresh of that backup. So every once in a while, make sure that you have your offline backup and that you actually update it. That is probably going to be the most helpful. And make sure that you have the ability to actually access that backup, because sometimes people don't think about it, but if your password documentation as an example is in your OneDrive, and that OneDrive is now encrypted, you're going to have a loop. So that's kind of what we're saying. Make sure that you actually test it and you understand what you should be doing during the time of the disaster, so you will not encourage some sort of an issue like that during the actual disaster itself. So test it before you do. You will be surprised, but we came across huge organizations where the disaster recovery plan with all of the documentation of what should be done is actually stored on the server that during their disaster recovery testing should have been offline. And then it's like, okay, what do we do now?
Agreed. You know what? You got me thinking. I'm going to go do an offline. What? And of course, we're seeing this more and more now, even during COVID, because I think people are more susceptible. Maybe they're not as vigilant, with their security and stuff. Let's return. We don't have a lot of time left, Mickey. I apologize. It goes very quickly, but let's go back to the raise with Insight. You've been profitable 6 quarters in a row, so it's not like you need the money to keep the lights on. What other than putting it in a mattress or in an interest yielding account, what are you guys going to do with this money, right? How is it going to accelerate the Semperis story?
Sure. So we are actually one of those companies that are hiring during these times of COVID. And we're mostly accelerating on the R&D side of the house. That we're expanding our offering to cover the cloud identity providers as well, but then also spreading all across the security posture. And as you know, hackers never stop, or I should say cybercriminals to be more precise. They never stop. There are new attacks coming out all the time. And it's our job to make sure that we are as fast as they are and faster when possible. So we are hiring on all the R&D sections, and if you are watching this show, you are welcome to go to the website and see the job positions that we have posted there. But we're also hiring on basically every department. If it's sales, if it's pre-sale, post-sale engineers, incident response, we have it all right now.
Excellent. Good stuff. Mickey, we're almost out of time. First of all, congratulations on the raise. It's an interesting time to be raising money, but it's always better to. Someone much smarter than me once told me it's always better to raise money when you don't need it, and so congratulations on that. Also, man, just keep up the great work, because, knock wood, I've never been a victim of ransomware up to this point, but I have been the victim of hacking and stuff like that during my life, and until you've actually been through it, you don't realize how kind of violated it makes you feel, right? That someone does this to you. And so companies like Semperis that are preventing this and working on it, it's good work, right? It really, we talk about white hats and black hats and hackers versus, and not all hackers are necessarily evil. But, trying to fight the good fight here and doing what's right. Not that you don't, no one's saying you do it for free and it's the way you earn a living, but it's a good fight. It's good to be on that side of the road, right? Versus another side. So keep up the great work, man.
Thank you, and I really appreciate it. And we do sense of a mission in Semperis for sure. And to your point, and that's why I'm kind of cautious with using the term hackers. We do employ what we'll refer to as hackers, but basically with the idea of helping prevent and helping point out the weaknesses before the bad hackers actually do something about it. And thank you.
Excellent. You're welcome. Hey, be well. We'll check in with you. Stay safe during all of this. Mickey Bresman, CEO of Semperis, here on TechStrong TV. This is Alan Shimel. We'll be right back with our next guest.